if you're here, on behalf of Northwest Florida State College and our board, thank you for your service, your commitment, and your lasting legacy. Okay, today as we gather to celebrate the remarkable achievements of the class of '26, we're also mindful of the larger story we're a part of, one that stretches across generations of courage, service, and commitment to country. At Northwest Florida State College, that legacy is deeply woven into who we are. We are proud to be Raiders, a name that honors the extraordinary bravery of the Doolittle Raiders, whose enduring mission during 1942 changed the course of World War II and lifted up the spirit of a nation. That history is not distant for us. It is local. The Doolittle Raiders trained at what is now Duke Field, just a few miles from our campus. Their story is part of our very ground beneath our feet. This year, as our nation begins the commemoration of America 250, we are reminded of the enduring values that have defined our country for nearly 2.5 centuries: service, sacrifice, and the belief that each generation has a responsibility to build something better for the next. It's especially meaningful then that we are joined today by someone who carries that legacy not only in history books, but in her own family story. Our commencement speaker, Jonna Doolittle Hoppes, is the granddaughter of General Demi Doolittle, the leader of the famed Doolittle Raiders. She is an author, educator, and storyteller who has dedicated her life to persevering and sharing the lessons of that generation with audiences across the country. Through her work, she brings to life not just the history of Doolittle Raiders, but the character, resilience, and sense of purpose that define them, qualities that resonate powerfully with the journey you are all completing today. As you prepare to step into your future, you do so as part of that same American story, one that calls for courage, adaptability, and willingness to lead in times of uncertainty. It's my honor to introduce a speaker who embodies that legacy and helps carry forward it all for all of us. So please help me welcome Jonna Doolittle Hoppes.
On December 6, 1941, the people of the United States were pretty evenly divided over the war in Europe. We were split between interventionists and isolationists, and both sides felt very strongly about their position. But on December 7th, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, we came together as one nation, united under God. I can tell you at first, we weren't doing very well. We lost battle after battle in the Pacific. It didn't look very good for us. On April 18th, 1942, my grandfather, Jimmy Doolittle, led the first retaliatory strike against the islands of Japan. That mission did very little damage, but it was our first real victory. It became known as the Doolittle Raid, and it gave our nation hope. Gramps was proud to have had the opportunity to lead the raid, and he was very proud of his boys. President Roosevelt awarded him the Medal of Honor, and here's one of the first things he impressed upon us: he was just one man on a shared mission to make the world a better place. When he accepted the Medal of Honor, he accepted it on behalf of all of his men. He told the president that he would spend the rest of his life trying to earn it. Sometimes the focus lands on one person, and much of that attention is deserved, but it's rarely the whole story. A few years ago, I was invited to speak at one of the World War II bomb group reunions. When traveling across country, I generally go in the night before and circulate under the radar and try to get to know the people. That night, I sat with Al St. Ives and his family. I asked Al what he did in the war. He told me it wasn't very exciting. I pushed a little. He told me he was a bomb jockey. What does a bomb jockey do? I asked. Sets the fuses, loads the bombs. It's not very glamorous. I left it there. The next night, toward the end of the speech, I shared Al's story, including his opinion that his job wasn't glamorous. But I still had a question. Al, I asked, how effective would the bombers have been without you, without the bombs? We all play a role in the bigger picture. Don't ever forget that. It is true that people excel in their chosen fields. Some of you will rise to the top. Some will become leaders. Others will play important roles that aren't very glamorous and frequently aren't acknowledged. But they all contribute to the success of the mission. There are certain characteristics that help define successful people, regardless of their role. In his notes, my grandfather discussed some of the characteristics that people need to succeed. He felt that success required courage. You must be willing to put yourself out there, often in a very competitive environment. Physical courage is important, but moral courage is even more important. Success requires drive. Those of us who desire to excel, to get to the top of the heap, are ambitious and generally aggressive or become aggressive. There can be little criticism of the desire for excellence, particularly if used in the service of our fellow man. But be aware, aggressiveness can be used for good or evil, depending upon how, when, and for what reason it is employed. Success requires capability. You have to have an immediate potential to do the job, to do it well, and an ability to learn, to constantly learn. And it requires confidence. Confidence in your ability and confidence of your convictions. He also felt that with success came certain obligations, especially for those who achieve leadership roles. In his words, on the way up the ladder, it is necessary to cooperate with people. Upon achieving the top, cooperation with everyone is essential. Above all, one must engender to maintain respect and, if possible, the affection of your subordinates and contemporaries. This is accomplished through fair dealings, complete knowledge of the job at hand, enthusiasm, and responsibility for their welfare. Remember, we are all endowed by our Creator with special gifts. We all play a role in the larger mission. What we do with those gifts and how we live our lives is up to us, especially in this ever-changing and challenging world. On September 9th, 1945, my grandfather was stationed in Okinawa. One afternoon, he saw a young boy who'd been badly injured by one of our bombs. It had a profound effect on him. That evening, he wrote a letter to my grandmother. Joe, we must realize that nations are just groups of individuals. And if individuals will fight, so will nations. More readily, in fact, if induced by mass hysteria, which can be induced by carefully arranged and controlled propaganda. We no longer have geographic isolation from Europe and Asia. Scientific development of the future will bring all parts of the world relatively still closer together. Someday, I hope the world can disband its military establishment and we can devote ourselves wholly to truly constructive pursuits. But until that time comes, let's do everything possible to so train our children and so direct our nation as to give them both the highest possible degree of security in the world in which they find themselves. He wrote those words 81 years ago. That reality is today. These are the realities that you must deal with. 81 years ago, he urged America to continue all-out scientific development so we lead the world in technology as well as tactics. We are on the brink of a technological revolution that will change our world forever. The choices you make will set the course for future generations. Today, our nation is divided, but we can heal. I've lived through 2 periods of division before this, as a child during the Civil Rights Movement, and as a teenager whose father was spit on when he returned from Vietnam. Healing requires the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Later, in that same letter my grandfather wrote, I saw another little Okinawan kid with his entire right side in a plaster cast, but ambulatory, holding on to the index finger of a medical sergeant with his good hand and looking up to him with a look of consummate confidence in his new friend and protector. They were both just standing there. It might have appeared to the unobservant that the sergeant wasn't getting his work done, but he was. He was doing the finest job that a human can do, being kind and fair and friendly in the truest sense of the terms. He had no possibility of reward, except that he knew subconsciously, perhaps, that he was making the world just a tiny bit better. That letter gives us a little insight into my grandfather's philosophy of life. I would like to conclude today with more of his words. I believe we were all put on this earth with just one purpose: to serve our fellow man. It doesn't matter what form this service takes. You can build a bridge, or write a poem, or paint a picture, or have a house by the side of the road for the weary traveler. The criteria is this: if a man leaves the earth a better place than he found it, then his life has been worthwhile. I feel that a person should comport himself as to do no one harm, afford others happiness, extract personal happiness from life as he can, and make the world a little better place as a result of his having lived in it. I have supreme confidence in the efficacy of prayer and believe wholeheartedly in the golden rule. One's destiny, which in the final analysis is one's ability to serve his fellow man, is determined to some degree by the public at large, to a greater degree by his immediate associates, subordinates, contemporaries, and supervisors, and most of all, by himself. Today, as I look at you, I am filled with optimism. I have every faith that your generation will pick up this mantle and move forward with courage and patience and ingenuity and vision, that you will move technology forward in ways my generation never imagined, that you will seek peace and fairness in this ever-changing and challenging world, and that each of you will leave the world a better place. Thank you.